start with what is, okay, this unit, we're going to do 3 sections in chapter 5. 2 of them are pretty easy. One of them could be the hardest thing we do this year. Okay?
Could be,
now,
it's going to be.
I need you to keep an open mind and I need you to be patient. Nobody simplifies trigonometric expressions perfectly when they just begin. You will be able to do this, but you've got to keep an open mind and you've got to practice. So number 1, we're on note sheet page 39. I handed out the new note sheets the other day. Everybody should have them. Yep, everybody has them. We have our new note sheets, page 39. And the very first expression is sine cubed plus sine times cosine squared. And your job is to simplify this. Okay? Now you got your purple sheet out. You've got what you memorized already stored in your head. Now, when I look at this problem, I notice that there are signs in both parts of the problem. What can I do when I have the same thing in both parts? I can factor it out. So I'm going to factor out a sign. I can only take out one because I only have one here, but I'm going to take out a sign. Now when I pull a sign out of a sine cubed term, what will be left?
Sine
Squared. It's just like regular algebra. Don't be confused by that. You're just doing it with signs instead of regular x's or n's or something. So there are 3 of them here. I'm going to pull one of them out. That leaves me with 2. Plus, all right, now what am I left with here when I take out a sign? Cosine squared. Oh, that equals 1. This right here just equals 1. So what does this big mess just simplify down to? Sine x. Sine squared plus cosine squared is 1. You were supposed to memorize that. That's a biggie. Uh-huh.
If we have A here, by the time we take the final, do we have A here?
Nope.
Now that's a big if. I'm going to take that final. I'm going to tell you that off the top.
All right, let's look at number 2.
You really think, like, I don't even know why that just makes us look like time because we know that's not going to happen.
Okay, now when I look at this problem, when I had to write it down, it's already written for you, I had to write it down. When I write this problem down, it occurred to me, I've got a parentheses times a parentheses. So think about regular algebra class. What do you do when you have a parentheses times a parentheses? You FOIL. You FOIL. So let's FOIL this. What's first times first?
The secant squared.
Secant squared. Very
On
good.
fire. Then it's
What's outsides?
negative secant squared.
No, just negative secant. Not squared, just negative secant.
Okay.
What are the insides?
That's a secant.
Plus secant. And what are the lasts?
Negative 1. All over.
So when I looked at the problem, when you looked at the problem, you saw parentheses times a parentheses. Thomas, are we rolling?
Yeah, we're good.
Thanks. We saw parentheses times a parentheses, and that signaled to us we're going to FOIL. Now, I want to stop for a minute and talk about the 2 problems we've done so far. How did we start this one? What did we notice about this one? We could factor something out. That's an algebra skill. You already have that skill. You're just applying it to the trigonometry. Here, how did we start this out? Foiling. You already know how to FOIL. We're just doing it with secants now instead of plain numbers. All right, well, did you notice anything about your numerator? Don't these cancel? Doesn't a negative secant and a positive secant cancel out?
Yes, ma'am.
So my numerator is secant squared minus 1.
And then don't those secant squares cancel out?
Well, this is a secant squared and this is a sine squared, so they are different.
Damn.
And, wait, because of the minus, they don't cancel anyway.
It's not funny.
Now, I want you to think about, I see Bryce looking at his purple sheet, he knows this. There is something on the sheet that says 1 plus tangent squared is secant squared.
Really? It's not all this shit.
It's called a Pythagorean identity. You were supposed to memorize it. 1 plus tangent squared is secant squared. Now, what do I have in the numerator? I have secant squared minus 1. So if I moved this 1 over, I'd have tangent squared equal to secant squared minus 1.
Where did the tangent come from?
This is on my purple sheet.
I'm aware, but like on the white sheet, did we just transfer?
It's, Maya, this is a fact of life. And I need, when I see a secant squared minus 1, I need to recognize that's the same as tangent squared.
So we just ignore the
You do
denominator.
not see this on your sheet. You see this, and you have to rewrite it like this.
Wait, so quick question. So the denominator that's sine
I'm
squared,
not doing anything with
we
that
ignore
yet.
that. That's done.
I'll do something with it in a minute, but
Okay.
first I'm doing something with the numerator.
Okay.
So what I would like for you to do is on your purple sheet, either next to or above, below, wherever there's room, to this one right here, write this. This is just a different version of this. But you need to recognize when you find a secant squared minus 1, you need to recognize that's the same as tangent squared. Okay? So now my problem is tangent squared over sine squared. One more time.
I don't think my brain is.
Secant squared minus 1. This quantity right here is the same as tangent squared. Now, nope, we're not done yet. But we're getting close. We have tangent squared divided by sine squared.
What? Number 1 was so simple.
What is another way of writing tangent squared? You should have this memorized. Look on your purple sheet if you don't.
Okay.
Sine over cosine. So tangent is sine squared over cosine squared. That's what tangent is. It's on your purple sheet.
Are we still
That's
number
being
2?
divided by sine squared over 1. Yes, we are still on problem number 2. I told you some of these are challenging. How do I divide fractions?
Cross multiply.
No,
Reciprocal.
multiply by the
Reciprocal.
reciprocal. So sine squared over cosine squared times 1 over sine squared.
Sine squared, that's
These will cancel out. This is a multiply problem now. I just started again up here because I ran out of room. So what am I left with? 1 over cosine squared,
equals secant.
which is secant squared. So this big mess simplified all the way down to secant squared.
This is terrific.
So it's the,
So I'm going to go through those steps again. I would appreciate if you were listening.
so this is the answer. Will it always be the first term of the oil?
No, No, that was coincidence. Okay, here was the original problem. So we started off by doing what seems obvious, which is FOILing. And that gave us this. Then this is where we had to engage our brain. Secant squared minus 1 is the same as tangent squared. So now we have tangent squared divided by sine squared. But we know tangent is sine over cosine. So then we had sine squared over cosine squared divided by sine squared. So we inverted and multiplied because that's how we handle fractions. We could cancel. We were left with 1 over cosine squared, which is secant squared.
Oh, man.
I know. Trust me, you will get the hang of it. Okay, let's try another one.
Did I?
Let's go to number 4. We need a break. We need a little easier problem. Let's go to number 4.
It's codata.
Now, what? Oh, did I copy it wrong?
No.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. This is supposed to be cotangent. Okay. What is cotangent? Well, 1 over tangent, that would be one idea. What's another idea? Cosine over sine. So I'm going to write that as cosine over sine divided by, what's cosecant? 1 over sine. Okay, now wait a second, boys and girls. Make sure you followed what I did. This says cotangent divided by cosecant, right? Cotangent, look at your purple sheet. Cotangent is cosine over sine. Secant is 1 over sine. How do I divide fractions? Multiply by the reciprocal. Well, what happens when I do that? These will cancel, and I'll be left with just what? Cosine over 1 or cosine. So that reduces to just cosine. Number 5. By the way, if you don't like the theta, you may change it to an X or any other letter you want. If you prefer not to use thetas, that's fine. Just change it to an X or something. Okay? Now, we're going to do this one just like we did that one. So what do you think I'm going to start by doing? I've got a cosecant divided by a secant. What's cosecant? It's 1 over sine. Divided by 1 over cosine. So now I have a fraction divided by another fraction. We've done this twice already today. What do you do when you divide by a fraction? Multiply by the reciprocal. Now before, something canceled. This time nothing cancels. So I just multiply it together. What will I have on the top?
Cosine.
Cosine. And what will I have on the bottom?
Sine.
Now tell me about cosine over sine.
Cotangent.
It's cotangent. So that simplified down to cotangent. Okay, let's turn the page. Now, I want you to think a little bit about the last couple of problems that we did. The last two problems that we did, I erased the first one, but here's the second one. What was the first thing I did? I had cosecant over secant. What did I do with my cosecant and my secant? I changed them into what they equal. So I changed cosecant into 1 over sine, and I changed secant into 1 over cosine. That's always a great idea. This problem, though, doesn't have any secants or cosecants in it, so I can't do that. I can't make that change. In fact, I can't cancel anything either, can I? Anybody have an idea?
Problem over.
Change what?
So,
1 minus sine.
Oh, yeah. So between the two of you, you're figuring this out. There is an identity that says sine squared plus cosine squared equals 1. So if we rearrange that equation, we could rewrite it and say cosine squared equals 1 minus sine squared. Now look, this is on the purple sheet. If we subtracted sine squared from both sides, wouldn't it say this?
Yep.
So I want you to write this on the purple sheet next to this. It's a different version of that identity. You need to know that cosine squared is the same as 1 minus sine squared. Will?
Well, never mind. I was gonna, but I'll probably get my question.
Yep,
You do the same thing with cosine.
you could. So if you want to, while you're writing, go ahead and write this because it's true also, as Patrick has indicated. Sine squared is 1 minus cosine squared. Cosine squared is 1 minus sine squared. And sine squared plus cosine squared is 1.
So it's just 1. The answer.
So you gotta be careful.
What is cosine squared over cosine squared?
This is not squared.
Oh, so it's just cosine.
oh,
So I'm gonna take my numerator, cosine squared.
So we haven't even started solving the problem yet.
Nope.
Okay.
These are just things to add to your note sheet, or add to your purple sheet.
Okay.
But now, I'm gonna take this cosine squared right here, and what am I gonna plug in for cosine squared?
It's 1 minus
1 minus sine squared. Now, nothing cancels. You cannot cancel until you factor. So we're gonna factor first, okay? We're gonna factor first. You know our reading section. What? You know the reading section. Yeah. Oh, you too.
Oh, my phone?
Mm-hmm. And she's got hers out.
She's on the prowl. Hide him.
Bryce had his out earlier. I'm gonna spend all day putting detentions in.
Don't tire yourself doing that. If anything, just put extra credit in for not having it. But see, Jabron did not have his phone out today. 100,000 points extra credit.
This does not or does not cancel. You cannot cancel until you factor. So I want to remind you that the numerator is the difference of squares. If you were walking down the hallway and you found this,
I would ignore it.
You would factor it how?
I would ignore it.
1 minus x, 1 plus x. That's called the difference of squares.
If someone was talking on the hallway.
Yes, Jack. So my numerator is 1 minus a square. It's just like this one. So how will that numerator factor? 1 plus sine x, 1 minus sine x. Very, very good. The numerator is the difference of squares. It's 1 minus a square. 1 minus a square always factors as 1 plus the squared thing, 1 minus the squared thing. So this factors as 1 plus sine, 1 minus sine. Now that you have factored, you are allowed to cancel. So that simplifies to just this.
So that's 6.
Okay, I'm not exaggerating at all, but that was possibly the most confusing thing I've ever seen in my entire existence. My brain has never been violated. My brain has never been violated so many times.
But part of the problem is we haven't memorized our identities.
That is
So we're
true.
struggling with that confusion. And part of it is, yeah, it's hard. It just is, but that's okay. We'll get through it. Okay?
Do we get try hard points? Back in elementary school.
What I would like to do is try another one like that. So on your purple sheet, there should be some blank space at the bottom. So I'd like you to write this one down, and let's go through it. It's going to be just like this one, okay? It's going to be just like that one.
Don't fight. It'll be over just as quick as
Okay. Here we go. We're going to do this problem. This is not on your sheet. Maybe you can do it on your purple sheet or on if you got a piece of paper or something. We're going to do this one. Okay, this is not on the sheet, I don't think.
There's one almost like it, problem 10.
Yeah, no, I made this one up.
Okay, it's not on there, guys. This is just extra.
Okay, yeah. Because I want you to practice what we just did. Okay. Now I want you to look up here, tangent squared. Look on your purple sheet. What does tangent squared equal? You wrote it down a few minutes ago.
Secant squared? Secant?
It equals secant squared minus 1.
Secant squared
So
minus 1.
tangent squared equals secant squared minus 1.
I have a quick question.
Now, nothing cancels. You're going to want to try to cancel. But what do you have to do before you can cancel? Factor. So you need to look at your problem and say, does anything factor? On the top, you have a squared minus 1. That's like having x squared minus 1. That factors. How does x squared minus 1 factor? X plus 1, x minus 1. So how does this factor? Secant x plus 1, secant x minus 1.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
So, going all the way back to the beginning, so it's tan squared over secant x plus 1. Say, for example, it was tan squared x over tan x plus 1. Would we even have to switch to tan squared?
That would not simplify.
Okay. Okay.
You have to use a different strategy on that.
All right. That's cool.
Okay. So we rewrote tangent squared as secant squared minus 1, and we factored it. Now that we have factored, we can be open to canceling. Does anything cancel?
Yeah.
That cancels. So what's the answer?
Secant x minus 1.
Secant x minus 1. Yes, indeed. Tim?
What's that called? Like, what's that called when you talk about secant x?
Well, my pencil fucking.
Oh wait, never mind.
When I factor this,
Yeah.
I factored that numerator to get this. Okay, let's try one more. We'll start with kind of an easy one. Actually, we can do two more. Let's do 9 and 10. They're pretty fast and easy. We'll get these done. Number 9. Here we go. Take a look at problem number 9. And tell me what occurs to you.
Make that 1 plus tangent x to secant.
Yeah, you have on your purple sheet a formula, an identity, that you were supposed to memorize. And that identity says 1 plus tangent squared equals secant squared. That is a fact. So when you see a 1 plus tangent squared, what are you going to replace it with?
Secant x.
So this says cosine times secant squared. Now tell me about secant. What does secant equal?
1 over cosine.
So this would be cosine times 1 over cosine squared.
So 1 over cosine. 1 over cosine.
So we have cosine over cosine squared, which cancels exactly like you said, Kieran, 1 over cosine. Because you have a plain cosine over a cosine squared, so you can cancel, and that's 1 over cosine. Number 10, also easy. Number 10, let's look at it. We have tangent squared divided by secant squared. You can do this. This one's easy.
Okay,
Tell me about tangent squared.
that's the same as sine minus 1?
Well, we could do secant squared minus 1, but we could also think
Factor?
of it as sine squared over cosine squared. Tangent, that's one, it's called a quotient identity, it's on your paper. Tangent is sine over cosine. What's secant? 1 over cosine squared, because it's secant squared. Now you have a fraction divided by a fraction. So what do? We turn it over. And what happens when we turn it over? And what's the answer? Sine squared. Maya?
So do your exponents like match each other always?
Yes, if you're going to rewrite tangent squared, it has to be sine squared over cosine squared.
Submit my body.
Okay, your homework tonight will be some practice here. I promise it'll get easier, but only if you practice, okay? Thomas, would you turn this off? I need you to practice.